I never thought a simple fence could cause such a storm. But when you live in a small town, word travels faster than the wind across the fields. My ranch had been in my family for generations, a quiet piece of land with rolling hills, a red barn, and fences I built with my own hands. It wasn't just property to me. It was home, history, and hard work, all in one. So, when the HOA decided they could reassign part of it without even asking me, I knew I couldn't just sit back and watch. It all started one Monday morning when I noticed survey flags near the far end of my pasture. Bright orange and neatly lined up, as if someone had plans for my land. At first, I thought it was some kind of mistake. Maybe the utility company was doing maintenance. But when I called around, everyone told me the same thing. The HOA had approved a shared access area that cut straight through my property. No call, no letter, not even a knock on my door. I tried to reason with them. I showed up at their next meeting, thinking maybe it was all just confusion. But sitting across from me was the HOA president, a woman named Marcia, with that polished smile that never quite reached her eyes. She told me it was for community benefit, something about increasing property values and creating a walking trail. I told her, that's not a trail, that's my ranch. She didn't flinch. Said it was already voted on. Done deal. I went home that night, fuming. My granddad had built those fences with his own hands decades ago. And now someone who'd never lifted a shovel wanted to hand it off like it was a patch of public grass. I wasn't about to let that happen. So, I did what I do best. I went to work. I spent days out there with my tools, fixing, reinforcing, and building something that would make sure no one crossed that line again. But what I didn't know was that my fence would do a lot more than just mark a boundary. It would uncover secrets, start a feud, and make Marcia and the whole HOA wish they'd never touched my land. And that's where everything started to spiral out of control. The days that followed were quiet, almost too quiet. I'd finished putting up the new fence, tall, sturdy, and running straight across the section the HOA claimed was no longer mine. Every nail I hammered felt like a small act of defiance. But even as I worked, I couldn't shake the feeling that someone was watching. Trucks I didn't recognize started driving past the property more often. Sometimes they slowed down near the fence line, windows tinted, just long enough to make me uneasy. A week later, I found a notice pinned to my gate. It had the HOA logo stamped across the top, full of legal talk about unauthorized construction and noncompliance with community standards. It didn't make sense. My land had never been part of their community to begin with. I lived just outside the subdivision, far enough that their rules were supposed to stop at the tree line. Yet somehow, they'd pulled some paperwork that said otherwise. I started digging through old records, my father's dusty files, land deeds and maps yellowed with age. That's when I found something strange. A missing page in one of the property agreements. It looked like someone had removed it years ago. The more I read, the clearer it became that this wasn't just a misunderstanding, it was planned. I went to confront Marcia again, but this time she avoided me completely. No returned calls, no response to my letters. The neighbors who used to wave when they drove by now kept their distance. It was like someone had told them to. Still, I wasn't backing down. I knew my land, and I knew when someone was trying to take what didn't belong to them. What I didn't realize yet was that the fence, my fence, had already started something that couldn't be undone. A few nights later, I was sitting on the porch with a cup of coffee when I noticed lights flickering down by the fence. At first, I thought it was just the reflection from a passing car. But then I saw movement shadows near the corner post I had set myself. I grabbed a flashlight and headed down, the gravel crunching under my boots. When I got close, the lights vanished, and all I found was a fresh set of footprints in the dirt, leading toward the woods. Whoever it was had been there recently. The next morning, I called the county office to ask about the land records again. The clerk on the phone hesitated when I mentioned my property number. She said there had been some adjustments in the paperwork over the last few months, but couldn't tell me who authorized them. Her voice dropped lower, like she didn't want anyone to hear. "You might want to come down here in person," she said, and then quickly ended the call. When I showed up later that day, the file she mentioned was gone. Just gone. The woman at the counter said it had been checked out for review by someone from the HOA. I could feel my blood boiling. How did they even have access to county records? Back at the ranch, I started to notice more things out of place. A latch left open on the barn, tire tracks leading up to the back gate, and once, a drone hovering low over the pasture before zipping away. It felt like I was being watched, like someone was waiting for me to slip up. I didn't know what they were planning, but I had a feeling this fight over my ranch was just the beginning of something much bigger. The tension around the ranch grew thicker with every passing day. I could feel it in the air, a quiet pressure that made even the wind seem different. Every sound felt louder. Every small movement made me turn my head. The HOA hadn't sent another notice, but that silence felt worse than the letters. It meant they were planning something one evening. As the sun dipped behind the hills, I heard engines rumbling near the fence line. I walked out with my flashlight and saw a group of men in reflective vests unloading equipment from a truck. They said they were authorized contractors working under HOA approval to begin the new trail construction. My stomach dropped. They were really doing it right on my land. I told them to stop, that they had no right to touch that fence. One of them just shrugged and said, "We're just following orders." I could see the fresh paint on the side of their truck, the same HOA logo that had been on the letters. I called out to them again, but before I could take another step, one of the men pulled out a folder with documents showing a stamped permit with my property number. It looked official, but I knew it was wrong. I'd seen the real deeds myself. Someone had forged them. That night, I barely slept. I sat by the window, watching the fence under the moonlight, half expecting more trucks to arrive. Instead, sometime after midnight, I saw flashlights again, this time moving slowly along the fence, as if they were searching for something. My heart pounded as I slipped on my boots and went out the back door. The closer I got, the more I could hear low voices, arguing in hushed tones. Then, suddenly, one of the lights went out, followed by the sound of metal hitting the ground. That's when I realized they weren't just there to take the land, they were hiding something on it. And whatever it was buried right beneath my fence. I froze where I stood, the beam of my flashlight shaking in my hand. The men near the fence hadn't seen me yet, and I could hear their voices clearer now. They weren't talking about property lines or permits. They were talking about a pipeline connection and the old survey. My heart started to race. A pipeline. There wasn't supposed to be anything like that running through my land. My grandfather would have known if there was. I crouched low behind a stack of lumber, watching as one of them knelt down and brushed dirt away from the base of the fence post. The metal sound I'd heard earlier came again, this time sharper, like a tool hitting something solid underground. One of the men muttered, "If this leaks, it's on us." The other replied, "That's why they want it off his property before anyone finds out." That's when it clicked. This wasn't just about the HOA taking land for a walking trail. They were covering something up. Maybe an old forgotten gas line or a private connection laid years ago without permits. And if it was leaking, that could be dangerous. Suddenly, the community project and the fake documents made perfect sense. They needed the land to disappear quietly under their control. I backed away slowly, but a dry twig snapped under my boot. The sound was small, but enough. Flashlights swung in my direction. "Who's there?" one of them shouted. I didn't wait to answer. I ran for the barn, heart pounding, gravel flying under my feet. Behind me, I heard footsteps closing in and the crack of a radio call. Inside the barn, I grabbed my phone and hit record, whispering everything I'd just seen. I didn't know who I could trust anymore. Not the HOA, not the contractors, maybe not even the county. But one thing was clear. The fight over my ranch wasn't just about land anymore. It was about a secret someone would do anything to keep buried. By the next morning, I knew I couldn't wait any longer. I took the video I'd recorded that night and drove straight to the county office. My hands were still shaking as I explained what I'd seen: the fake permits, the digging, and the talk about a leaking pipeline. The clerk called in a county inspector, and within hours, a small team arrived at my property. They brought equipment and maps, marking areas around the fence with bright spray paint. I stayed back, watching as they dug carefully near the same post the men had been working on. When the shovel hit something metal, the inspector's face went pale. Buried less than 2 feet below the surface was an old rusted pipe, cracked, leaking, and still connected to a larger line running underneath the subdivision. It wasn't supposed to be there. According to the county records, that section had been sealed off years ago. The HOA must have known it was still active and leaking, but instead of reporting it, they tried to move the boundary line to shift responsibility away from their property. Not long after, county officials and news crews showed up. Marcia appeared too, standing stiff as the inspectors questioned her. For once, her polished smile was gone. She tried to claim it was a misunderstanding, but the forged documents and my video told the real story. The county fined the HOA heavily and ordered an immediate shutdown of the old line for safety repairs. I thought that was the end of it, until a week later, I received an envelope in the mail. Inside was a single sheet of paper, a copy of my grandfather's original deed. The one with the missing page, now mysteriously returned. At the bottom was a handwritten note that said, "Some fences protect more than land. Keep yours strong." There was no signature, but I had a feeling someone out there still knew more than they were letting on. And as I looked out over my ranch, the fence standing firm in the evening light, I couldn't shake the feeling that this story wasn't quite over yet. After the chaos settled, life on the ranch slowly returned to its quiet rhythm. The county repaired the old pipeline, and inspectors confirmed that my property was safe. The HOA was under investigation, their power over my land stripped away, and Marsh's influence in the neighborhood dwindled. Neighbors who had been wary of me before came back around, curious about what had happened, but also respectful of the fence I had built, not just as a boundary, but as a symbol of standing up for what's right. I spent the next few days walking the fence line, running my hands over the sturdy posts I had hammered into the ground. Each nail, each plank, felt like a piece of history, connecting me to my grandfather and the generations before him. The ranch wasn't just mine anymore. It was proof that persistence and vigilance could protect what truly mattered. The mystery of the return deed still lingered. Whoever had sent it knew the truth about the missing page and the original property line. It was a quiet reminder that some allies are unseen and some battles are fought behind the scenes. I didn't need to know their identity to feel gratitude. The deed, like the fence, was a sign that my land and my family's legacy were safe. Sitting on the porch that evening, I looked out over the rolling hills, the barn glowing in the sunset. The wind whispered through the grass, carrying a sense of calm I hadn't felt in weeks. My ranch had survived the threat, the secrets unearthed, and the attempts to take it from me. The lesson was clear. Protecting what you love isn't always easy, but it's worth every ounce of effort. And as the stars began to dot the sky, I realized that some fences do more than mark property lines. They mark boundaries of courage, resilience, and the unbreakable bond between a person and the land they call home. My ranch was mine, and nothing, no HOA, no forged documents, no secret pipelines could take that away again. Asterisk. If you enjoyed this story and want more intense thrillers and suspenseful adventures, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. give this video a like and share it with friends who love a good mystery. Your support helps me bring you more stories just like this one.